What the heck's a rain shadow?
We'll answer that question today on Rainshadow Living, your guide to Port Townsend, Sequim, and beyond.
Hi, I'm Trish Cole, and I'm coming at you from Sequim, Washington.
And I'm Jenny Erickson from Port Townsend, Washington.
And we want to welcome you to Rainshadow Living, your guide to Port Townsend, Sequim, and beyond.
We're super excited about our guest today. He's going to answer our question of the day, and I can't think of anybody better to answer that question. The question is, what the heck is a rain shadow? And our guest is the senior meteorologist for King TV, Rich Marriott. Now, if you are from Puget Sound, he needs no introduction. If you're from out of the area, you should know he is the senior meteorologist at King TV, been there for 31 years, avid outdoor enthusiast, and knows far more about weather in the Pacific Northwest than anyone else. His name is Rich Marriott. Rich, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I don't know if I know more than anybody else, but I might have seen more than anybody else. I'm about to come up actually in December of this year, though I can't remember what the exact date is. It'll be my 50th anniversary of forecasting weather for Western Washington.
Oh, that's terrific.
I started out as a mountain weather and avalanche forecaster. My graduate work at the University of Washington turned into the Northwest Avalanche Center. And so so I started forecasting back in December of 1975, which is pretty remarkable. And I was really bad.
A bad skier or a bad forecaster?
I wasn't the best skier, actually. Fortunately, my buddy in starting it was a really patient guy, but forecasting is an art form that you learn over time. A lot of it is just, it's like looking at art and figuring out what it's doing. It's kind of works like that. And it uses different parts of your brain. And yeah, first, and also 50 years ago, our computer models, there's no comparison. I mean, it's day and night. It's stone tablets now to computers. It's that much different what we have to work with these days. And with the information we can get out about the weather, that including things like the rain shadow, that we could never see in our models before, but it pops up in our models and we can actually see it because our resolution is so good anymore.
That's amazing. So, inquiring minds want to know, what is the rain shadow?
Well, if actually you think rain shadow, your first thought is, well, okay, that must be where all the rain falls, right?
Yeah.
It's exactly, you're in the shadow of the Olympic Mountains, which in terms of rainfall, it means there's less rain in a rain shadow than there is if you're not in the rain shadow. And it's pretty straightforward. First of all, when you move, you're sitting here on the Pacific, you have these very moist storms that come into the coast. The prevailing wind direction coming into the coast for most of our major storms comes out of the southwest, okay? And so it hits the southwest slopes of the Olympics. And when you take an air mass and you lift it, as you go up higher in the atmosphere, it gets colder. And so when air mass moves higher, it also gets colder. As it gets colder, the amount of water vapor it can hold goes down. And so it will reach a point where clouds will begin to form, and then it'll get enough, will condense out to form raindrops or snow, depending on the elevation. So it dumps huge amounts of rain on the southwest and west slopes of the Olympics. I think Forks gets something like 120 inches a year. Some of the southwestern stations there get close to 100 inches a year of rain. But by the time it gets over the top of the Olympics, it's all that's out of it. And then it starts going down the other side. Now it's going to lower elevations. And so it's getting warmer, so it can hold more moisture. And so basically the air gets drier as it goes down. And when it finally gets down to the northeastern part of the Olympic Peninsula, which would be places like Sequim and Port Townsend in that area, they're in the bullseye of the place which most of the time this drier air comes down, clears out the rain, definitely, and it oftentimes clears out the clouds as well. So you'll end up with more sunshine in the leeward side. And you see it as a real effect. You see it in satellite pictures, you see it in the computer models, et cetera. It's very, very well defined.
So Sequim and Port Townsend are both in a kind of a rain shadow area that doesn't get as much rain. For Western Washington, it's the least amount of rain area. Is that kind of what you're saying?
It is. And
Okay.
it's really interesting because if you look if you look southwest of, Port Townsend, Sequim, east Port Angeles, if you look to the southwest, you'll see the Olympic Mountains, and Mount Olympus is out there, the highest peak in the Olympics. And it gets about 220, 240 inches of water a year. Of course, some of it comes as snow, but we melt it down and find out how much it is. 50 miles northeast around Sequim and those areas, they get something around 15 to 16 inches. I mean, Los Angeles is about 13 inches a year, to give you a comparison. And there's a place, we don't know exactly where it is, somewhere out in the water. Someone wants to build an island out there south of Orcas Island, that the computer models estimate that they get probably around 14 inches, 13 inches a year, somewhere in there. So that is one of the biggest drops in annual precipitation distance-wise, that 50 miles from the top of Mount Olympus down to the northeast portion of the Olympic Peninsula, it's really remarkable. There's a place in India, I think, where it's supposed to be a little bit more, but it can't be that much more. I mean, it's just really, really a big difference.
Yeah.
Oh,
Does that make sense on what causes that, though?
Say that again, Rich.
I say, does that make sense in terms of what causes the rain shadow?
yeah.
I do
Definitely.
have a question. I have heard it referred to as the blue hole.
Well, yeah, you can do that. I mean, if you look at the satellite imagery during the day, I mean, you will see clouds around and you'll see a hole there. And I think it's also, if you're on the ground looking up, you can see blue sky. I mean, oftentimes, sometimes you'll have what we will see frequently when there's a storm going on is that area may be dry or might get a little mist or something, but oftentimes the clouds are very thin, so you're just looking through high clouds. So I spent a lot of time driving through there because I spent 10 summers living, and I now have a bunch of friends in the Olympic Peninsula, living on Mount Olympus, because I was working on the Blue Glacier up there for the University of Washington. I worked as a glaciologist for them during the summertime because my avalanche center job was only 9 months of the year. So
oh, wow. So Mount Olympus was the favorite mountain that I ever climbed. It was magical. I think that the rainforest is amazing.
The incredible thing is you can have this dry area there in the northeastern Olympic Peninsula, and on up into the San Juan Islands and over towards Whidbey Island, but you can go a 2-hour drive maybe to get out to a rainforest. I mean, Washington's crazy for these gigantic climatic differences you can see in short distances.
Well, and we have some of the most beautiful beaches here too in the Olympic Peninsula, I think, personally.
No, they really are. They really are. It's gorgeous out there, and it's wild. I mean, that's the thing that's really nice too, is you get up into the central and northern Washington coast, and it's a national park. And places are just gorgeous places out there that you can hike, not see people, see the Pacific, and you've got a rainforest to your back. That's pretty hard to beat.
And mountains everywhere.
Eagles overhead. Yeah, mountains everywhere. The Olympic Mountains are fantastic. I mean, you have easy access into Hurricane Ridge in that area, which gives us an expansive view out over the Olympics. And I have a lot of really close friends that I developed while I was working on the glacier up there that do all sorts of hiking. In fact, I should ask, so when you did Mount Olympus, Jenny, did you stop by the research station?
We did not.
Okay.
I forget what ranger station we stopped at to get our beer cans. But it was to the south and it was outside of the Olympics.
Okay, this is right up on the glacier. When you go up, you pass the ice fall on your left and you climb up to the big snow dome.
Oh, yeah.
At the north end of that on the rocks is this research station that was built for the International Geophysical Year back in 1957-58. And that's where I ran that for like 10 years during the summer.
Oh my gosh.
So I sit on my front porch and have a beer and close look at the Olympics.
That's exciting. You've had a really diverse background. I kind of read some of your bio on the King 5 website, and then I read some, I think, misinformation on another site or another Rich Marriott. I don't think there is another one.
An imposter. No.
So I found 3 different places where you were born. So
I was born in Long Beach, California.
Okay. I figured King 5 was correct. So yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, I moved here partly for the rain, for me, because I like rain. And growing up in California, and my parents told me that growing up, I used to watch the weather. There was a surprise, and when I was like 9 or 10, I told them I wanted to move to Washington because there was always a front across the state. And so I moved here and I've never been disappointed. But that's the great thing is on any given day, you know, if the rain is getting you down in Seattle, you can always jump in a car and drive up to the Olympic Peninsula and drive up there around you know, around Port Townsend and that area. And it's a different climate, you know. It's just beautiful. It's just the water and the mountains, and shouldn't tell people actually.
The hidden gem.
But
Yeah.
we like to share. I mean, seriously, it's
Yeah.
a beautiful place, and the Olympic Peninsula is a very, very special place in my heart as a result.
So
It sounds
since
like
you're
you
from
spent a lot of-
California
Mm-hmm.
and you really know the weather there, and you moved to the Pacific Northwest for a break from that, we have a lot of people moving here from places like Arizona and Colorado and California, and they are used to a whole lot of sun, and they read about sunny Sequim and they hear about the rain shadow. Do you have any opinion on how it compares? Let's say compares to Long Beach. Is it as sunny as California, or is it just less rain?
I would say if you go to the coastal areas of Southern California, okay, in terms of sunniness, I don't have the exact numbers. No, we don't normally meteorologists don't keep track of the amount of sunshine, or they do it in a really, you know, like if they see 10% of the day is you know, the sun's out, it's partly sunny. But anecdotally, okay, if you live near the coast in California, you get a lot of summertime cloudiness that won't burn off. In fact, a friend of mine who lived in Pebble Beach actually bought a house and moved inland 25 miles because the summers were so cold and gray that the sun never came out during the summertime. You know, whereas that's the secret gem of the Pacific Northwest is the fact that, you know, we talk about the rain and everything. Once we get to June, some people say it's after the 4th of July, that we get into that stretch of weather of like 2.5, 3 months where this is paradise. Doesn't rain. We get less rain. Like Seattle gets less rain in the month of July than Phoenix does, just to give you an idea. So it turns dry, sunny, and perfect. And you know, being near the water, being near the strait where, you know, the Northern Olympic Peninsula is, that just moderates the climate. I mean, you know, normally, you know, on a sunny summer day, it's going to be 75. And you know, sometimes it does get hot, you know, but because you're so close to that water, that it cools it down at nighttime. You drop down into the, you know, upper 50s and low 60s. So it cools down at night. So it's just, for me anyway, I mean, I count the days till summer comes. I love winter. I worked in winter sports for a while, but I count the days until we get, first of all, spring in the Pacific Northwest is a flower show starting any minute now. I mean, I'm on crocus patrol in my neighborhood. But those will be out,
Nice.
and then there'll be the tulips, the daffodils, and then the tulips, and then all the rockeries will be blooming, and they're just flowers until, although actually there are some flowers that bloom here. My camellias this year have been going crazy. They've been all in bloom all winter long. So it's a remarkable spot for that. It's if you want heat, you can go to Eastern Washington. That's not far away. They get a lot of heat. But if you want heat, if you're talking like 80s and 90s and, you know, above that, you should want that. You know, this is not the place. Western Washington is not the place to come. And, you know, up there along the strait, you know, you're going to be seeing, you know, you'll top out around 80 on a warm day. But it's beautiful. It's warm, it's sunny, it's comfortable. You can sit outside in the sun and not sweat to death or worry about becoming dehydrated. I mean, there's a lot to recommend it.
There's a lot of outdoor activities here too, and people take advantage of that. So
Oh,
whether hiking or biking, you know, extensive trail systems that are easily accessible. And I think a lot of people take advantage of that because of the weather, where it may not always be sunny, but it's comfortable quite often
comfortable.
throughout the year.
If you're going to go out mountain biking, you don't want to do it, at least I don't want to do it, when it's like 80, 85, 90 degrees. You know, honestly, I mean, if you're going to be out doing something really physically taxing, it's better off, you know, I think, in the upper 50s and 60s. And it's interesting how you kind of acclimatize to that. I mean, I wear shorts all year round and sandals basically all year round. I can't at work. They don't let me do it there. I've asked and they said, but
a lot of Washingtonians do.
I took it as a personal affront to my legs personally, but I think it's just a more comfortable environment that you can, you know, I wear a jacket in the winter. I don't want to set a bad example for my kids, but it's really, really livable climate to be in. And, you know, if you're worried about, and people do who live in Puget Sound, you know, they get too unplugged from the sunshine. They need more sunshine than you may find around Puget Sound area, because it does tend to, in the wintertime, it does get pretty cloudy, and it can stay cloudy here. But like today, the sun does come out, and you're within, you know, you can either live in the place where there's more sun, or you can drive to the place where there's more sun, you know, in a few hours, which is pretty remarkable.
Right.
My older son actually lives in Silverdale, so not too far from up where you guys are.
Real close by.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I always tell people that when they want to move here, that coming from a place like Arizona, I always say, you know, it still is the gloomy Pacific Northwest. And in December, it's going to be short days, gray skies. And so I do try to warn folks about that.
No, and that's true. And that's the thing which will really get to people is, you know, we only get 8 hours of sun, no matter what. If there's not a cloud in the sky, we have 8 hours of daylight, which for some folks is, you know, that's just not quite enough of a dosage. But yeah, but I mean, that is a fact. It's true. And those, you have a couple of months like that. I like to think of that as being the cozy time of year. I mean, I reach a point, we get towards the end of September, that which sometimes can get pretty warm here during the month of September. I'm ready to go inside, you know, watch football, you know, play board games, whatever, and feel comfortable being inside. So I think it gives so as a result, we do have seasonal changes, which growing up in Southern California, I didn't see snow for the first time till I was 13, and I didn't see it fall till I was 18. And then ended up working in it for 15 years. So
Well, and then we get snow, but it doesn't stay forever either. So that's the good thing. It's,
No,
you know,
no.
you get a little hint of it and you feel like, oh, I had a winter wonderland, and then it's gone. So you're not dealing with it for months at a time.
True, and
I
if you
did,
want it, you just drive to the mountains.
that's true. Yeah, it's right around the corner.
Oh.
So one of the things I did notice when I was looking at your background, and like I said, it's amazing all the things you've done. But one thing that I wasn't familiar with, and I thought that listeners might want to hear about, is forensic meteorology. Could
Oh.
you speak to that a little bit and what that is?
It's basically being an expert witness about the weather.
Oh, okay.
I haven't done too much of that because honestly, it's too serious for me. I mean,
Okay.
you know, I mean, I'm very responsible. I really think about what people do with my forecast and want to help people out, etc. But that's kind of and it was just too much business for me, really. But you know, the sort of thing you do is I remember like one case that I did was there was a unnamed sporting goods company that a couple of people were suing them because they slipped on ice. And they
Oh.
wanted to know if it was actually possible for ice to have formed that day. So I went through and looked at all the observations and everything, and you know where they were in relation to that, and what the geography was around their topography, and whether or not ice could form. And
Interesting.
the odds were very low actually. So, but they settled that case, and I got paid, and I was happy, so it worked out. But
Oh, that's
I just kind
interesting.
of quit doing that because I've got so many other things to do to keep me out of trouble.
Yeah, I thought maybe it tied in with the avalanches, but it's
Oh,
something
well,
entirely.
actually, it could have. I mean, I
Oh, it
could
could.
have done
Okay.
that. Yeah, realistically, I could have. One of my best friend is one of the top, not necessarily forensic, but he's one of the top expert witnesses in the world for snow safety and risk management for ski areas. And so I get together with him and on his huge yacht and listen to his stories about the pieces he's working on. Listening's fun, but I wouldn't want to be involved.
So, Rich, tell us your stories from your days as an avalanche forecaster.
Oh, it was a great time. It really was. The research we did at the University of Washington was kind of unique. They really weren't, it was interesting. It was funded by the Washington Department of Transportation. And the reason was, and this was back in the mid 70s, they they had just opened the interstate, I-90. They had problems building the I-90 bridge. As you come westbound off of Snoqualmie Pass, Franklin Falls Bridge that you go over, it had been hit by an avalanche, which had actually affected one of its supports. So they had to go back and re-engineer that. And they were having some problems with avalanche control and cars getting hit by avalanches. And so they were really concerned about it. And so they wanted to be able to forecast mountain weather and avalanches from a central location, because there's a whole bunch of different passes. And then both the Park Service and the Forest Service had an interest, because we had a couple of really tragic backcountry accidents where people had gone out in the backcountry and been killed by avalanches. So they funded the research. We developed the Avalanche Center, which we struggled through all the years that I was there to keep it funded. And now it's more, I think they had over 1 million people access their forecast last year. And backcountry skiing has been such a huge thing everywhere. And
so were you risking your life though? I mean, the equipment wasn't that sophisticated then. Did you have to
it was
ski?
not. I don't think that we weren't too sophisticated sometimes. We tried to be pretty much safe. I mean, it is risky, and I mean, I have lost a couple of friends that were not doing anything crazy. They were just doing their jobs, and bad things happen. But it's really it was just fun. I mean, I really enjoyed learning about snow and avalanches, and I'm still involved. Actually, I'm the head of the steering committee for the International Snow Science Workshop, which is the largest international conference on snow and avalanches. We just had our last meeting in Tromsø in Norway last fall. We had people from 27 countries, 11 or 1,200 people that came to it. So it's still fascinating, and to see how the Northwest Avalanche Center has grown. Now there's avalanche centers in a whole bunch of Western states, Canada, and over in Europe. And it's been really interesting to see that whole industry from the start and watch it grow. I mean, it's really fascinating. I'm getting a little old for some of the stuff that I used to do. I'm getting a lot old for some of the stuff I used to do. But it's just great to see what people are doing. Some of the extreme stuff people are doing. Ooh, geez. Even in my
and it's super important as a skier. You want that safety and knowing that when to set, like when the ski patrol goes up and sets off the
they're explosive.
Triggers the avalanche.
No, and that's really important. I mean, because you really need to know when and where you want to use your explosives, and you also want to protect. I mean, the thing is they do that control to protect the ski areas.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many people who like to ski now that it gets crowded on a weekend, so you go out in the backcountry, and there's thousands of people who go out into the backcountry on a decent weekend.
Yeah.
At the solitude, it's your summer hiking in a lot of ways for the areas that are higher elevations that are snowed in, and it's beautiful to get out in the wintertime. Just have to be a little bit more careful.
Yes. So and does that tie in with at all with lahars and earthquakes or system, or is that totally separate?
It's really, I mean, it's the same sort of physics. I mean, it's like hydrodynamics are involved in all this stuff, but you're dealing with really, really different material.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of my friends from when I was at the University of Washington have gone off to do to work in that field. In fact, one of the graduate students that worked with me, who I just reconnected with in this last year, he went on. He was working on the glacier. He went on and he was the head geologist at Mount Rainier National Park for 25 years and just recently retired. So I asked him, "What are you doing retiring?" You're a youngster, seriously. I watch people come into the Weather Service as interns and now they've retired.
Yeah.
You
just have a passion for it. You're going to be here forever.
I mean, it is. It really, and there's such a variety of things that are fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. I mean, life is. I want to stick around because there's so many great things that are coming up that we're going to learn about and discover, in the next few decades. So.
Well, and Washington has a very diverse systems to choose from too, right? With all the mountains and the beaches and the.
Oh yeah, I mean,
we have such a diversity. It seems like.
Yeah, well, this is one of those places where you can ski in the morning and be in the beach in the afternoon. So it has a lot to do. I mean, the only year-round ski area in the United States is at Mount Hood, which is a 3-4 hour drive away. And you're talking about stories from my years working in avalanche. I couldn't take any time off in the winter because it was avalanche season. So my wife and I, first week of August, we go down to Timberline and go skiing for a week.
Mm-hmm.
And the lifts open at like 6:30 in the morning. You didn't get to sleep in, and close around 9:30 because it gets too slushy. And then we go down in the rivers in the afternoon, or we would hike up higher on the mountain and dig a pit up there and enjoy the scenery and have a beverage or two. and then ski down at the end of the day. So there's these options that are available to you up there.
I've been known to do that and sit by the pool in the afternoon.
Yeah, that works. That
At
works.
the lodge.
Absolutely. I used to do
So
that in May
Check out-
down at Mount Bachelor in Oregon. I go down there, go skiing in the morning, and go sit by the pool in the afternoon.
right, yeah, it's
Rich,
amazing.
I have two more questions for you. I know you
Sure.
have a hard stop coming up.
Yeah, so I
The
have to go
first
pick my
question-
son up from his chess camp this week. So
So my first question is, if we get so little rain or rain that's on par with Southern California, do we need to worry about wildfires? I want to talk about this in the context of like climate change. We have a lot of people moving to our area.
Mhm.
We sometimes call them climate refugees because they want to get away from the smoke. They want to get away from the heat. And so they want to come here to sunny Sequim or to Port Townsend. But the world is changing. What do you think about climate change, and what do you think about the potential for disaster in our little paradise?
Well, we're talking about the potential for climate refugees 20 or 30 years ago when it came. I was working when I was at UCLA. One of the side projects we were working on was studying the potential for global cooling, because this was back when they were building the Concorde SST. Boeing was building the 2707, and they were talking about there were going to be 500 SST flights a day in the stratosphere, which would lay down a thin layer of high clouds around the entire globe, permanent. And because of all the water vapor would let out in the stratosphere. And so, I mean, what we were trying to compute how much that would reflect back some of the sun's heat and cool the earth. And so we were at that point, we were trying to do computations on how much it might get cooled, and then how would you mediate that? And of course, one of the ways that you could mediate it was to put increased greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. So I had moved on when the whole climate controversy came along. I was very surprised to hear suddenly putting CO2 in the atmosphere doesn't warm it, which in fact it does. Greenhouse gases warm the atmosphere. And then you do get these effects. And for Washington State, roughly for the west side of the Cascades, with climate change, two things. First of all, if you're going to be somewhere in the world for the next 50 years for in terms of climate change, this is one of the best places to be. The change will be less, and it won't be that extreme. We will have, as we saw a couple of years ago, we can get hotter now. We've had that happen. That could happen more often, but we'll have warmer summers, and we'll also have warmer winters, but they may be wetter winters. That's what is projected for us. In terms of, you're talking about wildfires, yeah, that is a concern. It really is a concern. You're a little bit better off up on the Olympic Peninsula because you got the strait right nearby. It stays cool. I think the strait, if it's like the Sound, and when it gets really warm, it might make 55, degrees, something like that. So you've got that big radiator out there to help keep you cool and not dry out as much. But any place you have a forest, or you've got grasslands, and we have the dry period during the summer, there is the risk of wildfires. And I think along the strait, we've seen some pretty large, wildfires in the Olympic National Park. So it can happen. It's less likely, I think, overall, and to get ones that are the size, at least along the strait. I mean, there are some concerns within Puget Sound, what they call the urban interface area, where now, and we were talking about this during all the terrible tragedy down in Los Angeles, that we get to September after a dry summer. There hasn't been much rain since back in May, and in September we oftentimes get winds coming down out of the Cascades, which are dry and hot. And so in the last 40, 50 years, we were kind of tucked into Bellevue. That was kind of the eastern extent, and then who knows what lived out there. It's too scary. But I mean, now we're out there, we're out in the foothills, we're in North Bend, we're in the relatively new city of Snoqualmie. And so we're out in the forest, which is beautiful. I lived in Redmond for 30 years, and it's absolutely gorgeous. But you get into that time of year, and there are concerns about that. I mean, people are aware of the problem and planning for the problem as well. And so, yeah, you can't rule that out entirely. I mean, unless you want to live in the middle of a concrete whatever. But if you follow the usual practices.
But comparatively speaking,
What's that?
Comparatively speaking, this is a pretty good place to be.
It's a pretty good place. And I think that even in places like this, that if you follow what they talk about in terms of clearing, defendable space around your home,
Mhm.
Use if you're in a risk area, using modern materials which are more fire resistant. As beautiful as a cedar roof is, not a good idea probably. Things like that. So I mean, there's things you can do. I certainly would not live in Redmond. I had been out of the city for a while, and I moved back to Seattle, and I kind of like living in the city now for a while after being out in the middle of the country for 30 years.
And so as we wrap this up, what advice would you give to someone who is thinking about coming to the Olympic Peninsula? It could be someone from Pierce County or King County or Skagit County, or it could be someone, from out of state. What would you tell them about the weather and about the rain shadow?
I would say, well, if you're trying to find a place that is comfortable really all year round without extremes, if you're looking for the place that has within Western Washington that has more sunshine, the rain shadow is the place to go. You want to be northeast of the Olympics, basically. It's a large, big area out there that generally gets less than 20 inches of rain a year. So again, that's not much more than what they get in Southern California, like in the LA basin. This is a place to come. But I'd say, come and visit, and don't just come in the middle of summer when everything is totally ideal. Come for a winter visit, if you're gonna, so that you know kind of what you're buying into or get a better feel for it. And it might work out for you. Okay. It really, really may. So, or you may decide it's just a wonderful place to vacation. So
We love it here.
I
Any
would-
last
can't get me out of
last
the dynamite.
words, Rich?
I don't know. It's so many beautiful places in the Pacific Northwest, so many adventures to be had. And, living here gives you more access to all of those as well. And it's a wonderful place to come visit, but I think it's a better place to live. But that's just me. And I
Rich, thank you
I like staying
so
in
much.
tents, which my wife hates. So it's obviously a matter of taste.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
This
you're
has
welcome.
been
It's great talking to you guys.
Yeah, we appreciate you joining us today. It's been great. Thank you for all that information that you provided, and it's fun chatting with you.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm going to go. My afternoon job as an Uber driver for my son. So
That's important.
that definitely is.
Well, I think we were really, both of us are really grateful to have Rich on today. He's got an enormous field of knowledge and the idea that we live in an area that has the least amount of rain and even compares to places like Arizona and California is pretty amazing. The Olympic Peninsula and the rain shadow is really the place to be.
Yeah, and I love the fact that he said, even with climate change, even with all the unpredictability that's happening, the rain shadow is the place to be.
So stay tuned for the next podcast where we're going to explore the parks and beaches of Port Townsend and Sequim, the Olympic Peninsula.
Should be exciting. So be sure to tune in. And if you have a chance, subscribe. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Right. Goodbye.